I used to think loyalty was boring. Now I know it's the most dangerous thing you can offer someone who doesn't deserve it. The house feels different when it's just yours again. Not better, not worse, just honest. I sit in what used to be our living room, surrounded by the debris of 17 years. School photos of Ava and Lucas arranged on the coffee table like evidence of a life that actually mattered. Their faces beam up at me from soccer fields and graduation ceremonies, untouched by the rot that was spreading beneath their feet all those years. The silence isn't lonely anymore. It's clean. But I need to go back. Back to that Friday evening when everything cracked open like an egg hitting concrete. Back to when I still believed in the fiction we'd built together. 1 year and 3 months earlier. Vanessa called me predictable on our second date. "You're the safe choice," she said, smiling like it was a compliment. 23 years old and already tired of excitement, she wanted stability. I gave her that. I gave her everything. I built us a life in Charlotte that looked exactly like success. 2-story colonial in Myers Park, German sedan in the driveway, kids in private school. I worked in IT security, the kind of job that pays well and bores people at dinner parties. Vanessa worked in client relations for a consulting firm, which meant networking events and business trips and conversations I stopped trying to follow years ago. She called me boring at least once a week, sometimes fondly, like pet names. "My boring husband, fixing another broken thing," she would say, sometimes with an edge that cut deeper than she pretended. "We both knew the spark was gone," she would tell me later. "I thought marriage was supposed to be boring. I thought boring meant safe." The Friday it all unraveled started like every other Friday. Vanessa left early for a client breakfast. I made coffee for one, packed the kids' lunches, dropped them at school. Normal, predictable, the kind of routine that holds a family together while everything underneath slowly dissolves. I was debugging server architecture when my phone buzzed at 3:45 p.m. The school. Lucas's teacher, apologetic but firm. He'd been waiting in the pickup line for 45 minutes. Where was his mother? Where was his mother? I left work immediately, my chest tight with the familiar mixture of irritation and guilt that comes with being married to someone who treats schedules like suggestions. Lucas sat on the school steps, backpack clutched against his chest, trying not to cry in front of the few remaining kids. 14 years old and already learning to hide his hurt. "Dad's here," I said, and watched his shoulders drop with relief. "Mom forgot again," he said quietly. Again. I called Vanessa from the car. It went straight to voicemail. I called again. Same thing. By the time we got home, I'd called 6 times. She walked through the door at 7:30, carrying takeout bags and wearing the smile she reserved for cover-ups. Sorry. Client lunch ran late, then my phone died. "I brought Thai food to make up for it," she announced. Smooth, practiced, the kind of lie that comes from experience. I watched her set the table, chattering about her day, apologizing to Lucas with theatrical remorse. She was good at this, better than someone should be at lying to their family. "Your phone was off for 4 hours?" I asked. "Dead battery. You know how these things are," she replied. I almost believed her. 17 years of marriage teaches you to swallow doubt, to choose peace over truth, to trust the person sleeping next to you even when your gut says run. But then she went to charge her phone. The Apple Watch she'd bought herself for Christmas was sitting on the kitchen counter, the screen lighting up with notifications she'd missed while her phone was dead. Text after text, scrolling past like evidence of a different life. Connor, 3:12 p.m. Meet me at the Omni, room 1247. Connor, 3:45 p.m. You coming? I'm already here. Connor, 4:15 p.m. Vanessa? Everything okay? 3:12 p.m. Exactly when she should have been picking up our son. I stared at that watch for maybe 10 seconds, but it felt like falling down a well. Everything I thought I knew about my life, about my wife, about the boring, safe existence I'd built, all of it reshaping itself around this new, terrible clarity. Connor, room 1247. While Lucas waited on school steps, Vanessa was in the kitchen, serving pad thai onto our good plates, humming something under her breath, still performing the role of loving wife and mother, even with the evidence of her betrayal glowing 3 feet away. I could have confronted her right then. Could have held up the watch, demanded answers, let 17 years of marriage explode in our kitchen over Thai food and broken promises. Instead, I said nothing. I helped Lucas with homework. I ate dinner and asked about her day and listened to her elaborate on the lie she'd already told. I watched her kiss our children goodnight and brush her teeth and slip into bed beside me like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I just wasn't ready to let her know it yet. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathe beside me. The woman I'd built my entire adult life around was a stranger. Worse than a stranger, strangers don't have access to your bank account and your children and your heart. By morning, I'd made a decision that would define everything that followed. I was going to find out exactly who Vanessa really was. And then, I was going to make sure she never had the chance to hurt us again. Boring, predictable me, the safe choice. She had no idea how dangerous that could be. The thing about being married to someone for 17 years is that you stop seeing them clearly. They become background noise, familiar furniture, the sound of running water you don't notice until it stops. But I was noticing everything now. I started small, careful. The same methodical approach I used for network security at work, except now I was protecting something that actually mattered. My children's future and what was left of my own dignity. Vanessa's Apple Watch was the gateway drug. She'd synced it to our shared iCloud account years ago, one of those domestic conveniences that couples adopt without thinking. Every text, every call, every notification flowing through our family data plan like poison in the water supply. I set up a monitoring system that would have impressed my IT colleagues. Screen mirroring software on her phone, hidden behind a routine family sharing app. Keystroke logging on her laptop. Even location tracking through the car's GPS system we'd installed for safety when the kids started driving. 3 weeks of digital archaeology revealed a marriage that was already dead. I just hadn't been invited to the funeral. Connor Michaels, divorced marketing director from Raleigh, 42 years old, drives a BMW, lives in a downtown condo that probably costs more than our mortgage. LinkedIn profile full of stock photos and buzzwords about disrupting traditional paradigms. The kind of man who uses networking as foreplay. They'd been meeting for 8 months, twice a week, sometimes 3 times when she had overnight client conferences. Always expensive hotels, always charged to our joint credit card under business expense categories I was too trusting to question. The Omni, the Ballantine, the Ritz-Carlton in Uptown. A geography of betrayal mapped across Charlotte's finest hospitality. I printed everything. Bank statements showing $23,000 in unexplained charges over 8 months. Text messages that read like a romance novel written by someone with a business degree. Photos she'd sent him from our bedroom, our kitchen, our anniversary dinner last month. She was good at compartmentalization. I'll give her that. The same woman who forgot to pick up our son was meticulous about scheduling her adultery around family obligations. Soccer games on Saturday, affairs on Tuesday, parent-teacher conferences Thursday evening, hotel rooms Friday afternoon. The worst part wasn't the sex. It was the intimacy I recognized but had never received. In her messages to Connor, Vanessa was funny, spontaneous, vulnerable. She sent him poetry. She talked about her dreams, her fears, her dissatisfaction with suburban life. She was the woman I'd fallen in love with 20 years ago, preserved in digital amber for someone else's consumption. I feel like I'm disappearing in that house, like I'm just playing a role in someone else's life. He fixes everything except the things that matter. Sometimes I look at him and think about how much easier it would be if he just wasn't there anymore. That last one stopped me cold. I read it 17 times, each repetition driving the knife deeper. Not divorce, not separation, just gone. I sat in my home office at 2 a.m., surrounded by evidence of my wife's betrayal, and felt something I'd never experienced before. The cold satisfaction of being underestimated by someone who was about to learn exactly what boring, predictable men are capable of when you threaten their children. I called a forensic accountant Monday morning, a family lawyer Tuesday afternoon. By Wednesday, I had a team of professionals who specialized in dismantling the lives of unfaithful spouses with surgical precision. "This is comprehensive," the lawyer said, reviewing my documentation. "Almost clinical. Most people come in here emotional, scattered. You've built a federal case." "I'm very good at my job," I told him. "Which is?" he asked. "Protecting valuable assets from threats they don't see coming." He smiled. "In this context, what are the valuable assets? My children, my financial security, my reputation." "And the threat?" he asked. I looked at the stack of evidence between us, hundreds of pages documenting 8 months of lies, financial fraud, and emotional betrayal. A woman who thinks boring is the same as harmless. I drove home that evening through the same neighborhoods I'd been navigating for 17 years, past the same houses full of families that looked exactly like ours from the outside. But I wasn't the same man who'd made this drive yesterday. I was someone new, someone dangerous, someone who was about to give Vanessa the most interesting conversation of her life. I picked Thursday evening for the confrontation, not because it was special, but because it was perfectly ordinary. Kids finished with homework, dinner cleaned up, the house settling into the rhythm that had defined our family for years. If our marriage was going to die, it would die in the kitchen where we'd built it, surrounded by the domestic props of a life that was already over. Vanessa was loading the dishwasher when I set the folder on the counter. "What's this?" she asked, not looking up from the plates. "Everything," I replied. Something in my voice made her turn around. I watched her face as she opened the folder, saw the exact moment when her performance ended and the real Vanessa emerged, calculating, defensive, and completely unprepared for the depth of what I'd discovered. Bank statements, hotel receipts, screenshots of text messages, Connor's LinkedIn profile printed in color, 8 months of evidence arranged chronologically like a timeline of betrayal. She flipped through the pages slowly, and I realized I was watching a masterclass in damage control. No surprise, no shame, no tears. Just the cold assessment of someone deciding how much to confess versus how much to deny. "How long have you been spying on me?" she asked. "How long have you been stealing from us?" I countered. She closed the folder and looked at me directly for the first time in months. "We're adults, David. We both knew the spark was gone." The spark. 17 years of marriage, 2 children, a house, a life, reduced to a missing spark. "Is that what you call it when you spend our children's college fund on hotel rooms?" I asked. "Don't be dramatic. It was a few dinners, some overnight stays. $23,000, I replied. That stopped her. I watched her recalculate, probably trying to figure out if I was bluffing. "You work, you come home, you fix broken things. That's it. You're not interesting anymore, David. You haven't been interesting in years," she said. There it was. The truth she'd been hiding behind politeness and routine. I wasn't a husband who'd been betrayed. I was a man who'd failed to keep his wife entertained. "So you decided to find someone who was," I said. "I decided to remember what it felt like to be alive," she replied. "While our son waited at school for 45 minutes, I countered. For the first time, she flinched. "That was an accident." Number. "That was priorities," I pressed. I opened my own folder, the one I'd prepared for this moment. divorce papers, financial disclosure requirements, custody agreements, a forensic accountant's report documenting every fraudulent charge, character witness statements from the kids' teachers about missed events and forgotten obligations. "This is what's going to happen," I said, my voice steady in a way that surprised both of us. "Monday morning, these papers get filed. The bank gets notified about fraudulent charges on our joint accounts. Your employer gets a copy of the financial investigation. The kids get told the truth about why their mother was too busy to pick them up from school." She stared at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious about anything in my life," I replied. "David, we can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can what? Fix this? Like I fix everything else? The same way I fixed our marriage while you were Connor in hotel rooms paid for with our mortgage money?" She stepped back. I don't think she'd ever heard me use that word in 17 years of marriage. "You're being vindictive," she said. "I'm being thorough," I replied. I gathered the papers and stood up. The kitchen felt smaller suddenly, like the walls were closing in around the life we'd built and destroyed in this same space. "I trusted you with everything," I said. "My money, my children, my reputation. You took all of it and gave it to someone else. And when I catch you, you tell me it's my fault for being boring." "That's not," she stammered. "It is exactly what you said. You want interesting? This is going to be very interesting." I left her standing in our kitchen, surrounded by evidence of her own betrayal, finally understanding that the boring, predictable husband she'd taken for granted had become the most dangerous person in her life. From upstairs, I could hear Ava practicing piano and Lucas playing video games with his friends. Normal sounds of childhood, blissfully unaware that their world was about to change forever. But it was going to change on my terms, with my timeline, according to my plan. For 17 years, I'd been the safe choice. Now I was going to show her exactly how unsafe that could be. Family court smells like industrial disinfectant and broken promises. I'd been dreading this moment for months, but sitting in the gallery watching Vanessa's lawyer shuffle through papers with increasing desperation, I felt something unexpected. Peace. Not satisfaction. Not revenge. Just the quiet certainty that comes from seeing a long game played to its inevitable conclusion. Judge Morrison was a woman in her 60s who'd been hearing family dissolution cases for 20 years. She'd seen every variation of human failure that could destroy a marriage, and her questions cut through Vanessa's attempts at mitigation like a scalpel through scar tissue. "Mrs. Patterson, can you explain to the court why you were unreachable during the time you were supposed to collect your minor son from school?" the judge asked. Vanessa's lawyer had prepared her for this. I could see it in the way she straightened her shoulders, arranged her expression into something resembling maternal concern. "Your Honor, I was in a client meeting that ran longer than expected. My phone battery died, and I lost track of time. It was an isolated incident." The judge cut her off. "According to the school's records, your son has been left waiting for extended periods on 7 separate occasions over the past 8 months. Would you characterize those as isolated incidents as well?" 7 times. I hadn't even counted all of them. "There may have been other times when—" she hesitated. "Mrs. Patterson, were you or were you not in room 1247 at the Omni Hotel during the time your son was waiting to be picked up from school?" The courtroom went quiet. Vanessa's face went white. Her lawyer tried to object, but Judge Morrison cut him off with a look that could have frozen blood. "Answer the question, Mrs. Patterson." "Yes, I was," she replied weakly. "And the purpose of this hotel visit?" the judge asked. Silence. The kind of silence that admits everything. "Your Honor, I don't see how my client's personal life—" her lawyer tried to interrupt. "I'll tell you how it's relevant, counselor. This court is tasked with determining the best interests of 2 minor children. When a parent repeatedly chooses extramarital affairs over basic parental responsibilities, that becomes very relevant indeed." I watched Vanessa's composure crack. Not all at once, she was too controlled for that, but piece by piece, like paint peeling off a wall in the sun. "Mrs. Patterson, can you explain these charges to your joint account? The Ballantine Resort, 8 months ago, $347 for dinner and drinks. The Omni, 7 months ago, $289 for room service. The Ritz-Carlton." "Objection, Your Honor. These expenses could be legitimate business." "Could be, Counselor. But according to the forensic accounting report filed with this court, these charges correlate exactly with text messages to one Connor Michaels. Messages that explicitly reference hotel room numbers, dinner reservations, and intimate encounters. Would you like me to read some of these messages into the record?" Vanessa finally looked at me. Really looked at me. For the first time since this whole thing started. And I realized she was finally seeing me clearly. Not the boring husband she could manipulate and dismiss, but the man who had systematically dismantled her life with the same methodical patience she'd once found so tedious. "No, Your Honor, that won't be necessary," she said. "Mrs. Patterson, in your own words, can you explain to this court why you believe you should maintain primary custody of your children?" It was a simple question, the kind any parent should be able to answer without hesitation. But I watched Vanessa struggle with it, searching for words that would somehow justify 8 months of lies, financial betrayal, and neglect. "I love my children. I made some mistakes, but I love them," she replied. "Love them enough to steal from their college funds to finance your affair?" the judge asked. "It wasn't stealing. It was our joint account." The judge cut her off. "Used for unauthorized personal expenses while deceiving your spouse about their nature. In most jurisdictions, Mrs. Patterson, that's called fraud." Judge Morrison's gaze shifted to me. "Mr. Patterson, do you have anything to add?" I could have said a lot. About the lies, the manipulation, the years of being called boring while she was systematically destroying our family. About the nights I'd stayed awake wondering what I'd done wrong, how I could be a better husband to someone who was already shopping for my replacement. Instead, I said, "I just want my children to be safe, Your Honor, and to know that at least one of their parents can be trusted to show up when they need us." The ruling took less than 5 minutes. Primary custody to me, supervised visitation for Vanessa, asset division that accounted for her fraudulent use of marital funds, character assessment that would follow her into any future custody disputes. As we left the courthouse, I walked between Ava and Lucas, their silence heavy with the weight of everything they'd learned about their mother over the past few months. 16 and 14 years old, forced to grow up all at once because one parent decided her happiness mattered more than their stability. Vanessa caught up with us on the courthouse steps. "Kids, I know this is hard to understand, but..." Lucas turned to look at her. My quiet, serious son who'd inherited my tendency toward careful consideration. "Mom," he said, his voice steady in a way that broke my heart. "You forgot to pick me up from school because you were with another man. There's nothing hard to understand about that." Then he walked away. Ava followed him without a word. Vanessa stood there watching her children disappear into the parking garage, finally understanding the full cost of choosing excitement over responsibility, passion over partnership. "This isn't over, David," she said. "Yes," I said. "It is." I left her standing on the courthouse steps, alone in the afternoon sun, holding papers that legally confirmed what had been emotionally true for months. She was no longer part of our family. The boring, predictable husband had finally become interesting, just not in the way she'd expected. The silence in the house isn't empty anymore. It's full of the things that actually matter. Ava practicing college interview answers in the mirror, Lucas building circuit boards at the kitchen table, the coffee maker I programmed to start at 6:30, because I'm the only one who needs to be anywhere in the morning. 1 year. That first night after Vanessa moved out, I sat in our living room, my living room, and listened to the house settle around me like an old friend getting comfortable. No more performance. No more walking on eggshells around someone else's moods. No more pretending that predictable was a character flaw instead of a superpower. Vanessa sends texts sometimes, usually around holidays or the kids' birthdays, as if maternal instinct operates on a calendar schedule. Brief attempts at relevance. Hope Lucas did well on his driving test. Tell Ava I'm proud of her college acceptances. The kids read them with the polite disinterest they might show a distant relative's Christmas card. Acknowledgement without engagement. They've learned to protect themselves from hope that comes with conditions attached. She's living in a studio apartment near South End now, working part-time for a company that hired her without checking references too carefully. The Charlotte professional network she'd cultivated so carefully turned out to have excellent information-sharing protocols. Word travels fast in consulting circles when someone gets fired for embezzling expense accounts. Connor stopped returning her calls about 6 months after the divorce was finalized. Apparently, the excitement of an affair loses its appeal when it becomes just another relationship, complete with baggage and consequences, and a woman who needs more than hotel rooms and stolen afternoons. I don't feel sorry for her. I don't feel vindicated either. Mostly, I feel like someone who survived a car accident, grateful to be alive, aware of how close I came to losing everything that mattered. Ava got into Carolina with a partial scholarship. She's planning to study psychology, which probably means she'll spend the next 4 years figuring out how her mother's betrayal shaped her understanding of trust and commitment. She talks about it sometimes, late at night when we're both in the kitchen making tea and avoiding the silence that used to feel dangerous. "Do you think she loved us?" she asked me last month. "I think she loved the idea of us," I said. "The family that looked good on Christmas cards. She just didn't love the day-to-day work of actually being part of it." "Is that enough?" she asked. "What do you think?" I countered. She considered this while stirring honey into her tea. "I think love is what you do when no one's watching. When it's not interesting or exciting. When it's just Tuesday morning and someone needs you to show up." My daughter, at 17, understanding something her mother never learned. Lucas made honor roll for the first time this semester. He's building a robot for the state competition, working in the garage every evening with the same methodical patience I use for debugging code. Yesterday, he asked if I could teach him to change the oil in his car. "YouTube could show me," he said, "but I want to learn it from you." That's what boring gets you. Children who want to learn your version of competence because they've seen what happens when people choose flash over substance. The house feels different now. Not bigger or smaller, just honest. The furniture isn't arranged to impress anyone. The schedules exist to serve the people who live here instead of maintaining a performance for people who don't. I cook dinner most nights. Nothing fancy, just food that tastes like home. We eat at the kitchen table and talk about school, work, projects, dreams that don't require anyone else's validation. Last week, Ava asked if I'm going to start dating. "Are you interested in finding someone new?" she asked. I thought about it while loading the dishwasher. The same dishwasher where I'd set down the folder that ended my marriage a year ago. "I'm interested in being someone worth finding," I said. "When the time comes." "What's the difference?" she asked. "The difference is knowing that boring isn't a bug, it's a feature. The right person won't need me to be more interesting. They'll just need me to be here." She smiled at that. "Mom never understood that, did she?" she asked. She thought love was something that happened to you instead of something you did for someone else. This morning, I'm fixing a broken window latch in the living room. It's been sticking for weeks. The kind of small maintenance task that Vanessa used to cite as evidence of my disappointing domesticity. But now I see it differently. I'm not just fixing broken things, I'm maintaining something worth preserving. The house, the routines, the trust my children have rebuilt in the concept of reliability. All of it fragile, all of it requiring the kind of daily attention that looks boring from the outside, but feels like love from within. As I work, I can hear Ava on the phone with colleges, Lucas practicing guitar in his room, the coffee maker starting its afternoon cycle for the cup I'll want after I finish this project. Normal sounds of a family functioning according to its own rhythm instead of someone else's expectations. I used to think loyalty was boring. I used to think predictable was a weakness, that being the safe choice meant being the second choice. Now I know better. The most dangerous thing you can do is underestimate someone who shows up when they say they will, who means what they say, who builds something real instead of something that looks good from a distance. I go to work. I come home. I fix what's broken. And I find deep satisfaction in a life that someone else found too small to contain their restless hunger for something more interesting than love. The latch clicks into place with a solid, satisfying sound. Fixed, maintained, ready for another year of quiet service, just like everything else worth keeping. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.